Hello and welcome to Top Story. Now, it was 2 months ago today that 26-year-old fruit and vegetable seller set himself alight in the Tunisian town of Sidi Bouzid. As he did so, Mohamed Bouazizi could not have imagined the chain of events that would follow. The seemingly unshakable regimes of Zine El Abidine Ben Ali and of Hosni Mubarak have fallen, and the big question now facing the Arab world is who will be next. From Tehran to Tunis via Manama and Sana'a, the people are getting noisier. And today, the Arab world's longest-serving leader, Colonel Qadhafi, will be facing a day of rage from the streets of Libya. Well, to discuss that, I'm joined by Lazare BEULLAC, who is editor-in-chief of Maghreb Confidential. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. Now, first of all, we're looking ahead to today's protests. There have been protests in the last couple of days. This is extremely unusual in a country like Libya. And, of course, what we're seeing is the continuation of these protests that seem to be going off all around the Middle East, to do with the same kind of things: discontent over unemployment, rising living costs, corruption, and autocratic leaderships. It is, in a sense, the continuation of what we've seen elsewhere.
Well, it is in the sense that Libyans have always been very inspired by what happened in Tunisia and Egypt, which are the two neighboring countries, obviously. But in the case of Libya, there have been discontent for years now, and there have been protests especially in Benghazi in the east, for many years now. And today, February 17th has been chosen as a date, as a specific date, as a symbol, really, because as a remembrance day of the Abu Salim prison massacre in 1986, where at least 1,000 people were killed by the regime. And one of the leaders of the opposition today is a lawyer, Fatih Derbal, of the families of the people who were killed back then. And from time to time, February 17th is a day of protest in Libya. It was the case in 2008 already, in Benghazi especially.
So here we have something that we've seen sort of generalized across the Arab world over the last few weeks, but with specifics within the context of Libya. So resentment going back for some time now, and a particularly autocratic regime. It allows very little dissent, very little opposition. It is remarkable in a sense that they've managed to make their voices heard at all.
Yes, indeed. What's new in Libya, as in all these countries in the Maghreb, is internet, and people have been able to organize and protest over Facebook, over Twitter, over blog, web pages, whatever. And what's new as well is that people inside Libya can now speak to the opposition abroad, in the United States, in London, especially, and also in other Arab countries. There are many Libyans who live in exile, and they used to be totally cut away from the country. And now with internet, they can, organize dissent and speak with one voice.
So it's enabled the opposition we've seen to gather themselves and to organize themselves. But Tunisia and Egypt were different insofar as the journalists could get in so much easier. That is not the case in Libya. It's going to be very difficult to follow exactly what's going on.
Yes, it's true that Libya is especially opaque, even more than Tunisia, where journalists had a hard time working. That several journalists were killed in January. And we have no hard data on what's happening in Libya in terms of numbers of people arrested or beaten up or killed. It will be very, very difficult to have a clear picture in the coming days, especially now that Qadhafi is asking his own supporters to take to the streets and to protest and riot in opposition to the February 17th movement.
Do you think this could lead to troubles, as we saw in Egypt, between pro and anti-demonstrators?
Well, that might happen, of course, but Qadhafi is maybe being more prudent in the sense that he's calling for riots in Tripoli, whereas the protesters are mainly in the east, in Benghazi and in other cities to the east of the country.
Now, the other difference with Tunisia and Egypt is, of course, that both the Tunisian and Egyptian regimes were close to the West, very conscious of what Western governments, allies were saying about what was happening, very conscious of their image with those allies. Clearly, that is less the case with Colonel Qadhafi. We heard the European Union warning today, urging him to show restraint. Surely he doesn't care very much at all what the American administration or the European Union has to say to him, does he?
Well, I think he does. I mean, he's worked very hard to end the embargo that was imposed by the USA on Libya for years and years, and he's made many concessions in order to have this embargo ended. And he depends more and more on the West to invest in Libya, bring expertise in the country, and he's also a major gas and oil supplier to Europe. So he can't really afford another embargo, really. So that might be new as well in Libya.
What about other pressures, internal pressures that might be brought to bear? We've seen in Egypt the crucial role that the army played, and suspect that in many ways it was the army saying to Mubarak on the Friday, look, we simply can't contain these people anymore, you're going to have to go, that provided the final push. What counterbalance, what counterweight is there to Colonel Qadhafi within Libya?
Well, it's much less evident in Libya. I mean, the army is very weak. The police is completely controlled by Qadhafi and his sons, and the security services are really private militias answering only to the sons and very close advisors of Muammar Qadhafi. So I don't see the army playing the same role as in Tunisia or in Egypt. And frankly, there are no associations or syndicates like there was in Tunisia, for instance.
And of course, this suspicion from the outside, at least, that after all these years of rule and given his eccentric behavior at times, the Libyan leader has become slightly unhinged. It's very difficult to predict, surely, how he's going to respond to all this.
Well, that's what has been said about Qadhafi every time there was a crisis in Libya or with Libya involved. But frankly, he's been very clever in the last 40 years to stay in power, even with an embargo, even with everybody saying he was nuts. Basically, he still managed to remain in power. So I think he's a very clever political individual. Perhaps
more than we give him credit for. Now, we've said with every time this sort of this Arab awakening has progressed, we've said surely Ben Ali can't fall. We've said surely not Hosni Mubarak. And again, now we think of Colonel Qadhafi and we think it seems impossible that he might go. Do you think there's a chance that a similar scenario might play out in Libya, and that we might come to see the fall of a regime that no one could imagine from here, that it could ever be taken down? Well,
it's hard to predict, but yeah, surely it might happen. I mean, the same problems there are the same problems in Libya as in the neighboring countries. A lot of unemployment, discontent at the people are asking where all this oil money is going, because frankly they're not seeing much of it. There's 30 or 40% unemployment among the youth, and this might topple the regime in the end.
Lazare BEULLAC, thanks very much indeed for your insights, and thanks for being with us. We will, of course, be following throughout the day here on France24 all that happens in Libya, but elsewhere, of course, in the Arab world, as this extraordinary story continues to unfold. Do stay with us.